Crayonshinchan. Although his body is that of a child, his mind is still that of an adult. I believe that many people's impressions of the Crayonshinchan anime remain in the two aspects of humor and vulgarity. This series not only tells a story with plots about friendship and familial love that are very helpful for children's preschool education, but it also includes a lot of pornographic jokes that make parents hesitate whether or not this thing is suitable for children to watch. After all, not every parent can accept their children doing the Mr. Elephant dance in front of them. It is undeniable that these pornographic jokes did attract many adults to watch this anime. A fondness for older women, strong athleticism, and the occasional adult EQ made me wonder if Shinosuke had been hit by a truck in his last life. Today is the official release date for Crayonshinchan's 2022 movie, Mononokeninjachinpuden, the 30th anniversary entry of the series and the first step into the Reiwa period. Due to the pandemic, many Crayonshinchan fans can't go to the movie theaters to contribute tickets. Taking advantage of this opportunity, let me take you on a review of the past 29 movies that you can watch from the comfort of your own home. From my impression, Crayonshinchan movies can be divided into two types. One is the Nohara family-based type that tends to be more of an affectionate family type, and the other is the adventurous and comedy type based on the Kasukabe Defense Force. Personally, I'd prefer if a movie had both types, and I always feel a kind of pity towards a movie that only follows one type. Back to the movies themselves. Most of Crayonshinchan's movies are very imaginative. Its background setting is always out of reality and full of unrestrained imagination. It's like being wanted by the whole country on the way to eat some barbecue. Not to mention, the villains brainwash them with props that look like they came from Doraemon. In the end, it is calm, and they all return to the feeling of real life. The previous adventures were like a dream, and ended with a touch of sadness with the sound of the ending song playing. The story is lively yet fantastical, which is what I love most about the Crayonshinchan movies. One of the few movies that stood out to me the most was its 14th installment, the legend called Dance Amigo. This movie was Crayonshinchan's first attempt to add horror elements to a movie, and the huge contrast between the previous ones and this one had become one of my dark childhood impressions. And I don't think I'll ever forget the scene of Kazuma's mother eating that chicken. It's a pity that this work did not insist on continuing that terrifying atmosphere through to the end, and finally turning back to that vulgar, perverted humor, ruining the atmosphere that had been paved before. After checking the ratings of the Crayonshinchan movies in different countries, I found that Crayonshinchan's best rated movies are concentrated in the period from the years 2000 to 2004, which is the period from the 8th movie to the 12th movie. Whether it's Yakiniku Road of Honor, which takes the hilarious to the extreme, or the Kusakabe Boys of the Evening Sun's imaginative and expressive journey into the world of theater, it wouldn't lose to those movies meant for adults. Of course, I'm not saying that those recent movies are bad. Robo-Dad Strikes Back and B-Class Gourmet Survival, both of these recent ones reminded me of the feeling of watching Crayonshinchan movies as a kid. The reason why that period can be considered the climax of Crayonshinchan is absolutely inseparable from the contribution of that one, the 2001 movie, The Adult Empire Strikes Back. It may not be as good as the previous ones in terms of only comedy and compassion, but it has the deepest meaning and the best plot among the 29 movies broadcasted today. The content of this work caters to it as an inter-epochal movie at the transition of the 20th century and the 21st century. A city that stays in the 20th century and is unwilling to step into the future. The movie begins in a nostalgic style, with men playing the heroes of tokusatsu to defeat monsters, and women wearing cute clothes and becoming magical girls. In this 20th century museum, the identities of adults and children seem to be reversed, and the entirety of Japan is dyed with nostalgic colors. The music, the red sunset, and the black and white TVs really brought me back to the 20th century. There may be many viewers who don't understand Japanese history and won't understand why their nostalgia is so serious. The 20th century was a period full of wars for the whole world. Why would they miss that period? Are they brainwashed by those villains? Well, in fact, the number of newborn babies in Japan after wars had increased rapidly, as well as the Japanese economy under the circumstances of manufacturing. And in the second half of the 20th century, Japan had become the second largest economic system in the world with a relatively small land area. However, its defeated past and its rapid development had created a sense of tearing. The prosperity they were now indulging in may only be short-lived and fictional. Some people looked forward to the arrival of the 21st century to bring them a better future. And another portion of the people were afraid that in the 21st century, it would deprive them of what they had. As a result, the latter fears were realized as a large number of disasters hit along with the collapse of the bubble economy, and everyone realized that in front of them was a high-pressure society that valued material and was tainted with spiritual erosion. The villains of this movie, Ken and Chako, were once a group of children who were full of hope for the future. After being struck by reality, they found that Japan had to choose between a bleak future and a fictional prosperity of the past. Apparently, they chose the second one. But what they longed for was not just the economic prosperity of the past. They preferred that kind of human touch that had gradually weakened in modern society, that kind of warm and kind communication between people. So they wanted to brainwash other people into staying in the 20th century like themselves. Maybe the word brainwashing isn't accurate, including adults like Hiroshi and Misai. In the deepest parts of their hearts, these adults did wish to return to their childhood, which gave the villains an opportunity to trigger their fond memories of their childhood. And as a result, they were reluctant to accept the reality they grew up with. The nostalgic smell of the town built by Ken and Chako that will always stay in the 20th century had always been a dim yellow sky, bustling streets, an uncle delivering ramen on a bicycle, and an aunt selling vegetables with a loud voice. In such a comfortable and peaceful scene, everyone tasted this small happiness. For them, the end of the 20th century was the most beautiful time. Once the sun set, a new century full of cold would come. On the other hand, Shinosuke's personality in this movie is the most lovable, rarely making dirty jokes. And after his parents' mind became more childish, the feeling of taking care of Himawari himself as an older brother really felt like he had matured. While sending nostalgic vibes to the adults, the movie doesn't forget its primary viewers, children. I think many people have thoughts from childhood that in a world without adults, a couple of friends could live a carefree life together. You could go to the supermarket and enjoy zero-money shopping, and eat all kinds of snacks without fear of being criticized by your parents. Always wanting to become an adult and experience the world through the eyes of them. The Kasakabe Defense Force's plot in the bar, where the kids imitate the adults' behavior, isn't just humorous, it also provides a wonderful sense of conflict. When adults dream of being a kid again, and a kid wishes they could grow up faster, the two sides' positions are completely reversed, reflecting the title of the movie, The Adult Empire Strikes Back. Who is the adult, and who is the child here? Then, the next day, the adults came back to capture the kids who didn't live in the 20th century, and after a cliché escaping action scene in a Crayon-Shinchan movie, the Kasakabe Defense Force realized that it was useless to keep running away. As newborns of the 21st century, they fought back against the organization that turned their parents into children. This legendary battle of the Kasakabe Defense Force versus the Nohara family isn't something you see in every movie. However, in this matchup, the members of the Kasakabe Defense Force have reached the max. The Nohara family on the other side lacks Shinosuke, child perversion, Himawari, marriage fraud, and Shido, joint dangerous road acts and drunk driving. These important combat powers, plus not unlocking Hiroshi's deadly biological weapon, led to their final defeat, and the Kasakabe Defense Force successfully invaded the enemy's base. However, unlike the Nohara family's fighting style, which is good at group physical combat, the Kasakabe Defense Force is better at chasing battles within vehicles. Now that they have lost their means of transportation, they're just a few ordinary kindergarten students, surrendering before the power of adults, and only a part of the Nohara family escaped. Since the children's content in the first half of the movie is over, the next ones are for the adults to watch. Suddenly waking up, seeing a father's wide and reliable back, taking a leisurely stroll along a rural trail surrounded by nature with a bumpy bike ride. The child soon became a teenager and left his father's reliance to bike on the small road alone, where he experienced spring, summer, fall, and winter, joys, emotions, and sorrows. This road accompanied the growth of the teenager until he became an adult. After becoming an adult, he left that road and came to the big city, where he made a new encounter, met the person he loved. The two formed a family together, a new life was born, and a new family embarked on the 32-year mortgage journey. This new life also brought stress, mistakes at work, and criticism from bosses that exhausted his spirit. But every time he saw the family's welcome when he arrived home, those previous glooms seemed to disappear in an instant. After exhaustion, taking a bath with his family and laughing together had become the pillars of his life. The parents and children relied on each other. This time, the man took his family back to that rural trail. No matter in which era, the meaning of this scene has never changed. In just 3 minutes without any lines, Nohara Hiroshi, a father's life was shown. Shinosuke used his dad's foot odor to free himself from the brainwashing. When he really woke up, he was not surrounded by the beauty he had imagined, but a cheap photo studio built with a few plastic blocks. Hiroshi's foot odor is similar to the Nohara family's secret weapon in many movies. It is usually used to render a funny atmosphere. In this movie, it gives it another layer to life's meaning, a smell different from the good old days that belongs only to the unpleasant but more precious smell of the present. After the brainwashing was lifted, the villains appeared. Unlike the usual boss battles, the world that Ken and Chaco had hoped for was full of a kind human interaction between people. So they chatted more easily and invited the Nohara family to their home to show them their ideals, preparing tea for the Nohara family like their guests, giving Shiro milk, and if they really wanted to go back to the 21st century, they're going to have to try to take it back by themselves. It can be seen from this that although Ken and Chaco both want to go back to the 20th century, their philosophy is still different. Chaco is holding on to a pure desire, simply thinking that as long as everything is the same as them, she can really go back. In contrast, Ken's thinking is more mature, and he had realized that what they are doing right now is meaningless. So, after the Nohara family left, Chaco asked him what the hell he was trying to do. Ken was just holding the railing and looking at the Nohara family who ran out to stop them, and replied indifferently that he hadn't run much recently. This short sentence can be read in several different ways. I personally think Ken wanted to tell Chaco that even if their spirits go back to when they were young, their bodies won't go back, as he now didn't have the strength to run out for the things he loved like they do. Here, the movie shows a new chase scene where Hiroshi and Misai almost indulge in the tenderness of the era several times, each time struggling to recover from grief. From running, to cycling, to driving in cars, technological advancements symbolized that they're approaching the 21st century. Not only did Ken not stop them, but he also broadcasted their efforts to everyone's TV through monitors, giving the viewers a choice to go back to the new century or stay in the old century. While the previous flashbacks showed Hiroshi's real side as a father, this time, the action scene on the tower shows us Misai's great side as a mother. Parents buying time for their children, a slowly raising elevator, and a teenager dashing towards the future. Finally, Ken looked towards the stairs as if looking forward to that boy's arrival. When he saw that Shinosuke had really reached the top, he began to hesitate, until he saw that the indicators of the brainwashing device had dropped to the bottom, proving that the residents of that town chose the new century after watching the Nohara family. Ken accepted his failure and offered his final blessings to those who intended to live in the new century. Unable to accept this reality, Chaco asked Shinosuke why he wanted to go back to the rotten 21st century. For Shinosuke, however, he never thought about the complex issues of the bleak future or the fictional prosperity of the past. What he cherished was the present, the noisy and lively daily life between family and friends. Chaco realized that their desire to go back to the past also meant depriving these children of their future. Knowing that the 20th century could no longer come back, the two gave up everything, and they would rather die in the past than go back to the future. Holding hands, they stepped onto the top of the tower, and the moment they were about to jump down, they were startled by a pigeon protecting its child. Having tasted the fear of death, they gave up on suicide. Their two consecutive plans were broken by the two families, and Ken smiled for the first time after seeing Chaco's dedication to life, as if his real wish had been fulfilled and finally released. In the end, the two of them drove in the direction of the sunset, looking for the new place that belonged to them. All the adults were released from their brainwashing and returned to their own homes, and all that remained was a deserted 20th century city. As mentioned before, the rich adventure is over as they returned home and turned on the lights in the living room, accompanied by a lifelike atmosphere that symbolized that everything was back to peace. When the ending song plays, there are no fancy decorative lyrics, just a person singing the trivial life things between herself and her mother, and adding a few pictures of the empty 20th century town once again elevated the whole theme of the movie. In conclusion, this movie is at the peak of Crayonshinchan in terms of its writing, visuals, music, and even artistry. This is a fairy tale for adults about innocence and oneself.